Today I want to talk about AI governance because it's something that not many people talk about. Most people, they just post on LinkedIn, oh, I created this £7,000 agent for this client and I'm giving it to you for free. If that is the case, I'm sorry for you because you've been scammed £7,000. What I'm trying to do over here is I'm trying to explain how you can approach your board to make sure that you are AI ready and that to make sure that you get the maximum return on investment on your AI efforts. The first thing I want to talk about is compliance and regulation. So in most businesses, I'm talking about manufacturing and so on, they will be familiar with ISO 9001. ISO 9001 has already a set of systems that are focused on data and how to protect your data. But in the era of AI, it's not enough. And for that, it's probably better if we try to accomplish the 42001 standard. I do believe that going forward, the more AI that is embedded into companies, the more that 42001 is going to be required to then prove to businesses and to the supply chain, for example, that you are truly AI ready and that your systems are capable of withstanding attacks and so on. And I'll get to those in a second here in security, etc. What these systems take into account is auditing. Like I said, whoever is familiar with 9001 will see that auditing is very familiar. It's just that you're using a different tool, which in this case is AI, and how do you audit AI? And for that, we need to be very, very careful and pragmatic, because one of the things that's going to happen is like you're gonna develop and generate more data, right? And AI systems are very data hungry. So as you generate more and more data, your auditing needs to grow with that. And what that means is that you need to be capable of creating a system or architecture that allows you to audit the system continuously, like you will do for an internal audit if you're working on 9001. For your data, your security, your architectures and so on, make sure that all of your AI systems are ready. And not only that, the supply chain going forward will have to be AI ready too. So their data systems are going to be necessarily available for AI. I'll talk about over here about the hybrid data format and what that means. And it's really important going forward that both the tier ones, the tier twos, etc. are all aligned with the AI governance of the OEM. If you're an OEM, I do recommend you to start looking into this because it's going to set you apart and it's going to put you miles in front of your competition. The second thing is security, and security, like we know, is very important. So data trails. So where are your logs going? How is the security of your servers? Do you have servers on site or do you use servers on the cloud? What kind of like assessments do you do of the readability of them? Where does the data go? Can you map all of those things in a way that is visible and the nodes, if you're using big data, all of them are connected and traceable and so on. All of these things, so the compliance and the data trails around security need to be connected. And this is what's going to be super important because AI systems, like any systems that we've seen in IT previously, are very susceptible to attacks. And one of the things that you might have seen online is that MCP is very susceptible to injection attacks. Okay, what does that mean? MCP is a way for agents. If you don't know what an agent is basically a system, I would say autonomous, but in reality, none of them are autonomous, but it's an autonomous system that basically performs tasks on your behalf. So MCP is the ability for the LLM, which powers the agent, to get more functionality like search online or access to your internal databases or access to SharePoint or access to whatever you want. Okay, this is the standard protocol. And injection is because all of these systems rely on plain English. There are malicious pieces of prompting or text that can go into the tools and that could disturb the agent from performing the task that it's supposed to do and leak all of your data. We've seen this with Comet. So Comet is a browser that Perplexity has developed, and in 2 days in Reddit they showcase how they can inject a prompt into the browser and that leaks your credentials. And if they can leak your credentials, that means that they can leak any of the data you have in your databases or any data that you have that requires authentication from your side. Okay, so data trails are super important. Now, recovery plans, which we are very familiar from 9001 again in today's, is what happens if you suffer a catastrophic system failure. So if your servers go down, how do you plan on recovering the system? Like, what is the redundancy? All those type of things, right? Imagine that you get, unfortunately, one of these attacks. So how do you sandbox that unit, and how do you make sure that you go back into normal function? What are your guardrails? So guardrails is super important. So how do you make sure that your AI stays within boundaries? And that means that in the event of an injection attack, for example, how do you basically protect the agent from accessing something that it shouldn't have access to, essentially? So all of this is super important in terms of security, and it's something that boards need to start paying attention to if they want to really embed AI. Now, ethics, on the ethical side, this is where it becomes a bit challenging, right? Because a lot of companies today have sustainability plans in which they have target emissions, for example. And the moment that in our strategy we bring LLMs into play, or agents, we're going to start talking about data centers, we're going to start talking about high electricity consumption, we're going to start talking about all of those things. So what happens when the usage of AI is challenging your sustainability goals? How are you going to merge the two of them? How can you come to a situation in which your sustainability goals are still number one priority and you still get the maximum benefit from AI? One of the things that I tend to suggest businesses is that they need to start considering SLMs. So SLM is a small language model, and most of them are open source. What that means is that you can get very specialized people that can use these SLMs to get the same efficiency than LLMs on very specific particular tasks. And the beauty of them is that they can live in commercial GPUs. So you can have them in a normal computer in your office or in your server room or whatever, without having to really go into data centers that have massive consumption demands. Okay, this is something really important. Another benefit is that from a security point of view, SLMs are way better, because think of this: when your data, which is what we're talking about here, your data trails, travels into an LLM endpoint, what that means is that your data is going into a third party. They see it, they analyze it, and then you have obviously something like SLAs in place in which confidentiality agreements prevent them from training on your data and so on. The reality is that, given what I've seen on AI and given what everybody's seeing in the news, your data is still going to be used for training. It's just that perhaps it's not going to be on a public model that everybody uses. It's going to be on an internal model, or it's going to be on a model that goes perhaps to just government use and so on. I'm pretty certain that that's going to be the case, and this is why SLMs are really important. If you truly want to keep your security yours, your product yours, your IP yours, then SLMs are the best possible solution that you can start thinking of right now. Now, if we're talking about SLMs, and not only SLMs or also LLMs, the ethical side is how to make sure that bias and fairness, which is something very known in machine learning, how do we make sure that bias and fairness is still a priority, and how do we minimize these type of things? For example, if we're talking about using these on, say, marketing data, which is one of the fields that I work in, how do we prevent AI systems from segmenting perhaps subgroups, niche groups that are targeted away from office, etc., because of the gender, racial color, etc. So all of those things need to be taken into account, and it's very important from an ethical point of view that we are open and that we are transparent in what we communicate that we're doing with the data that we're using for our AI systems. Lastly, the other pillar that I talk about is people. And I talk about people because, as we know, it's a very sensitive topic. A lot of people are currently very scared about what might happen to their jobs. And I think that comes from a vision of scarcity. Everybody in boardrooms is talking about how can I save money with AI. And my approach is completely different. It's how can I generate with AI, okay? And for this, people is extremely important. 6 months ago, people were saying, we are not going to need software developers, we're not going to need this type of roles because AI is going to do all of that. And a couple of days ago, one of the biggest media publishers posted that the key to unlocking AI success is human psychology. And when I saw that, I was laughing my ass off, because it's what I've been preaching for the last 6 to 7 months. And it looks like I was just preaching to the wind. How do we generate? We need our people, and they need to be AI trained, okay? And this looks like succession plans. So we're looking at timelines between 12 to 24 months in which, while we work on our AI systems, we work on the AI training, the workshops. How do we get people ready for AI? A lot of people are using AI without you knowing it. What do I mean by that? A lot of companies are banning currently the usage of AI due to IP leaks or data protection, all those type of things, right? Still, people are using AI behind closed doors because they see the benefit and because they can get productivity enhancement through it. My approach, or the easiest way to actually protect people from doing these things, is actually like just putting an intermediate step between the human and the third-party application. So, for example, if this is the human, very badly drawn, and that human sends a request to an LLM, put ChatGPT, what I suggest we do is that, and this is not difficult to do, is that we change the interface to put an intermediate step over here that is a verifier. And a verifier can be an SLM, okay? And the verifier's role, and this is why I was talking about how niche these tasks can be and how effective SLMs need to be. This niche task is to make sure that nobody is sending any proprietary data or anything that could be IP related to any of the third parties. And in that way, you can remove the shadow AI problem altogether, and you can give people access to any of the models available out there, all just using a verifier and a simple front end that can be built over a weekend with a tool like Lovable or Bolt or anything like that, right? The last thing that I want to talk about is hybrid data within the concept of people, compliance, and security, okay? Most AI systems require data to be in a very specific format. Currently, most AI systems or most agents work very, very well with JSON format. JSON is relatively readable, but it's not something like you will find in your companies, right? In your company, you will have PDFs, you will have Google spreadsheets, you will have anything that you might have on ERP. All of these types of data systems are designed for humans. They are not designed for AI. And so ideally, one of the things that companies need to do is to work on a hybrid data format that allows agents and humans to look at the same thing. So when it comes to auditing, when it comes to look at data trails, when it comes to look at AI training, all of that is aligned in a way that a human is always in the loop. And I talk about this a lot as well. Humans always need to be in the loop, and this is why they are so important and why they need to still be trained and why they're gonna be the key for you to grow your business. Hopefully this covers or gives you a top level overview on AI governance, AIG, and I'll be writing a lot about this because I feel like it's really important. So stay tuned and I'll see you on the next video.